Welcome to the Retirement Made Easy podcast, a show created to be your go-to source for straightforward retirement advice. Best of all, it is presented in a language that you can understand. Here's your host, certified financial planner, Greg Gonzalez.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Retirement Made Easy podcast. I'm Greg Gonzalez. Today's episode, it should be a good episode. This is episode number 213. We're going to talk about a case study of someone that was told they were okay. They were good to retire whenever they wanted to. And they decided to get a second opinion with our team at Retire Strong. And we told them something different. So I wanted to go into this case example. It's going to be anonymous, of course, but I think you'll find it really, really interesting of what it takes to be well prepared to retire versus ill prepared. And this person, it was really an eye-opening experience, not only for this individual, but for us as well, because we got to thinking, wow, there's people out there telling someone, hey, you're good. Don't worry about retirement. You're in a good place. There's a lot at stake there. Just the decision to retire itself. It's probably one of the biggest decisions you'll make in your lifetime, but you're walking away from likely your peak earning years to a lifestyle where every day is a Saturday for the next 30 some odd years, or however long you make it. So that'll be the first segment of the show today. Is we'll talk about this case study of why we suggested to this person, hey, now's not a good time to retire, even though that contradicts the advice that you're hearing from another financial professional. And then in the second segment of today's show, we're going to talk about how your goals drive your planning. So all your specific goals when it comes to retirement, I'll keep saying it until I'm blue in the face. Those specific goals should drive your planning when it comes to retirement, but your beliefs in your core values should really drive the strategy. I'll get into specific examples of this, even at our firm, Retire Strong, about our beliefs and our values. That really kind of drives the strategy. And the thing is, you might have beliefs, values that are different than somebody else, and that's okay. Because you can take it a step further and say, okay, what if I'm wrong? What if my beliefs maybe played out a different way? How would that impact your overall plan or the outcome of your plan? So we're going to talk about that. We'll even share with you kind of our beliefs as a firm and how we approach retirement planning that maybe you should be planning on too. You should be considering. So that'll be a fun segment. Again, nobody has a crystal ball, but those core beliefs should really dictate the strategy that you put into place. And before we get into all that, I just wanted to remind listeners, I know we got a lot of new listeners to the show. We look at the numbers and the viewer count, the download count just keeps going up and up and up, especially over the years since we started in 2020. So for the new listeners, I encourage you to visit our website, retirestrongfa.com. There's a link in the show notes so you don't have to grab a pen or a pencil or anything like that. Just follow the link. In the resources tab, you can download a lot of helpful retirement planning resources, like our tax guide, like our budgeting tool, like our women's guide to retirement, like our retirement secret sauce. They're all resources that are available on the website underneath the resource tab. And then for those people out there that are interviewing different retirement planners, maybe you're wanting to get serious. You're at that point where there's a lot at stake, you want a professional opinion, and maybe you want to partner with somebody to help you put a retirement plan together that will give you confidence and clarity. On our website, Retire Strong FA, at the top right, there's a button called Get Started. You can fill that form out, and Cheryl, our client relationship manager, will reach out, and we can see if we would be a good fit to work with you. And while you're at our website too, please continue to submit your questions. Those drive a lot of the content on the Retirement Made Easy podcast and a lot of episodes. As you know, a lot of people say their favorite segment of this podcast is listener submitted questions. So please submit those questions underneath the contact form. A lot of people will email them in. That's really, really helpful. And if you have a question about retirement that we haven't addressed or talked about on this podcast, or maybe we have and you want more in-depth information, please submit those questions. All right, let's get into today's episode. First segment of the show, we're going to talk about this case study. We're going to keep it anonymous. We asked this individual if we could use their example. They said absolutely. It was a big learning experience for them and very, very valuable. So this person was on the doorstep of retirement, 61 years old. They had been working with or had accounts with a different financial professional. And every time they had brought up the subject of retirement, am I okay to retire? What do you think? The answer was always the same. It was, yeah, you're cool. You're going to be okay. You're going to be just fine. But there was no plan to kind of support that recommendation or that suggestion. And they kept asking the question, hey, am I going to be okay? I'm getting closer to retirement. I'm now 1 year older. What do you think? Can I retire? And the answer again kept being the same. Yeah, you're cool. You're going to be good. Nothing to worry about, they said. And so they finally reached out to us for a second opinion. And we started to talk about their retirement, which was they planned to retire at 61. So we kind of talked about the ins and outs of their retirement plan, what they wanted. What was their retirement vision? That's what we always like to learn because nobody's retirement is going to be exactly the same. And all of your goals should dictate the planning that we do. So we've really got to understand, okay, you as an individual, if you're married, what about your spouse and what's important to them? What are their goals for retirement? And we can come up with a comprehensive view of, okay, what's your retirement vision? What's this going to cost? Have we thought about everything here? And with this individual, okay, taking a step back, retiring at 61, what about health insurance? How are we going to pay for that? They said, well, the advisors said, I'm going to have enough money. I'm fine. Prove it to me. Prove it to me with the plan. Let us see the plan that this person has prepared for you. And we can kind of analyze that and see maybe what's missing. And come to find out, there was no plan. There was nothing in writing that showed, okay, this is the amount of income or money you're going to be living on year in and year out, month in and month out. And this is the rate of return that your money is assumed to grow at, which is, again, just an assumption. There was no plan that kind of showed what taxes might be like in retirement and any potential tax strategy to mitigate a lot of those taxes. So there was a lot that was missing here. But first and foremost was health insurance. Okay, you retire at 61. What are you going to do until Medicare kicks in at 65? And so this person really didn't know their options when it came to health insurance. They said, well, Cobra, I think I've heard Cobra is expensive, but I guess that's what I'll do. Cobra does have a lifespan. Typically, it's 18 months. And for a spouse or dependents, it's 36 months. There would need to be a change. And if you retire at 61, that wouldn't get you to 65 for Cobra. So health insurance before you turn 65 is drastically different than after 65 when Medicare comes into play. That's a big reason why a lot of people push off retirement is simply because health insurance is so darn expensive or can be so darn expensive. And we always like to say it's better to know your options first and foremost, because if you don't know what your options are, you have no options, plain and simple. A lot of people, when we advise that they delay retirement or push off retirement, a lot of people immediately think, well, you're telling me I don't have enough money saved. I can't afford to retire. If I only had more money in my 401k or other retirement savings accounts, then I would be able to retire. And a lot of times when we're making these suggestions or recommendations, it's not a financial decision. It is, but it's the reasoning for our recommendation is not based solely on, okay, you don't have enough money saved. It's you haven't addressed these other areas of retirement. Retirement's a very multifaceted subject matter that we're trying to plan for. It's not just the finances. It's not just, okay, I got enough in my 401k. I can spend 4 or 5% a year and then I'm going to be good. There's much more to it than that. But we just touched on health insurance here. The other thing that this person was looking at, it was a big question on their mind, was, should I pay off my house right now? Or what should be my game plan of how to get this mortgage paid off? Now, granted, the balance was not, it was a 5-digit number. It wasn't a 6-digit number. So in the scheme of things, it wasn't a whole heck of a lot, but it's certainly something that needs to be discussed, because how you go about paying off that mortgage is certainly going to dictate your taxes and your tax strategy. Now, this person said something that we hear so often, and I think it's just a function of the current real estate market. We've heard so many people that said their original goal was to downsize upon retirement or shortly thereafter. But when this person said they were looking around, and I've heard this over and over again, for what you would get for a house by downsizing, you'd be happier just sticking with the home that you're in now. Because yeah, it's bigger, but it's better. You just get more. And it's not like you can bank, $100,000 or more by downsizing. That was a consideration. The plan had changed. What they always thought, okay, at some point I'll downsize. They come to find out, just based on how the real estate market is now, that's kind of off the table, because by downsizing, it would take away, their happiness and joy, and they'd get less. So what they were considering, and we ask, okay, what about home improvements? If you're going to stay in this home, what home improvements should you be planning for? And this individual said, well, it's funny you say that. I'd like to redo the kitchen and one of the bathrooms. That's high on my priority list. And then the next question is, what about your HVAC system? What about your roof? Come to find out, the roof was just replaced. HVAC system's a little old. That's something we're going to probably, it'd be a really, really good idea to plan for in the next 2 to 4 years. And then we talked about Social Security. Now, the current financial professional said, take it right away. Take it while the money's good and it's there. Take it at 62 as quick as you can. But then talking about, okay, how long we might live and how much of a piece of the pie Social Security would represent as far as income in retirement, you find out that this person's mother was still living at 86 and very active, and her father was still alive at 89 and doing quite well. So longevity ran in this person's family. And then lastly, we talked about goals. So what was this person's goals in retirement? One of the things at the top of the list was traveling. Really, really enjoyed traveling, had family at different, this person lived in the Midwest, had family on the West Coast and the East Coast and down in Florida. So traveling was going to be a big component of their retirement vision. And we all know, depending on how you travel and where you travel to, it can be very expensive. And that was something that really needed to be baked into this retirement plan, because that was very, very important to this person. That was one of the top priorities, really. Now, there were some other minor goals that we won't get into, but that all comes to kind of the brainstorming and saying, okay, what does your retirement vision look like? Those bucket list items, what's important to you? If every day was a Saturday and money was not a factor, what would you do? What would you want your retirement to look like? And when you really start thinking, you find what makes you happy and what a successful retirement, if you had to paint a picture, would entail. That's what we're planning for. Not, okay, you can take out 4 or 5% every year of your 401k and call it a day. We'll stop our planning there. That is so short-sighted. It's kind of the lazy way of doing things. And this person, as we had this in-depth conversation of the different elements that go into successful retirement planning, and this person said something that was eye-opening to us, and I even wrote down one of the quotes that this person said during this Zoom call. But they said, these are the conversations, these are the topics that I've just been wanting to have for so many years, but I just kept getting told, you're good, don't worry about it. You're going to be okay. There's nothing to worry about. Just retire whenever you want. But there's no shortcuts. This person said there's no shortcuts, and it seems like the people that take shortcuts end up paying for it. And that was such a great line that I actually wrote it down. And I'll continue to use that on the podcast. The elevator to success is broken. You have to use the stairs. So there's a lot of work. There's planning, there's considerations, there's brainstorming that can even go into retirement planning. And hopefully on the podcast here, we talk about enough of these topics that gets your mind thinking about how it applies to you and what you want your retirement vision to look like. Maybe some things that you were overthinking or some other things that you haven't considered. But what I want you to do is think about, okay, what's your retirement readiness grade or score? So this person, when we met them, their retirement readiness grade or score, we would give them a C minus. And of course, the best, our goal is an A plus. So then it's our job to say, okay, what's missing here? What would get them from a C minus current state to an A plus when it comes to their retirement plan or retirement readiness? It's rarely the case that somebody just doesn't have enough money saved. It's all the other factors of, okay, you don't have a really dialed in retirement plan that has all of the elements accounted for. Now, there could be some mistakes, maybe from a tax strategy standpoint. There could also be gaps in their planning that they're unaware of. And there's also risks that we need to account for. We need to think about, okay, what could make this plan that has to make it the next 30 years or however long we make it successful? What could go wrong? What are the risks? Long-term care is one of those risks that we believe everybody faces. So let's talk about your core beliefs. What do you believe? And we'll talk about our beliefs at Retire Strong. We happen to share several beliefs that will play into our strategy. So one of those is we need to figure out how we're going to address long-term care costs. Now, it's a risk, it's an expense that not everybody will pay for. Women, statistically, are more likely to incur long-term care costs than men. We can go through the statistics, and I think on another podcast, I will explain exactly what those statistics are, the likelihood of needing long-term care, women or male versus female. Now, looking at the statistics, of course, that's just going to give you kind of an average. That's how insurance companies price these long-term care insurance plans based on likelihood of needing care, what the average care is. And we know it's very, very expensive, especially if you need assisted living or memory care for a long length of time. Now, that's the question mark. How long are we going to, no one has a crystal ball, but what's it going to cost in the future? If you're 62 today and you need care at 92, 30 years from now, what will that cost? I think we can all agree that it's going to be a lot more expensive than it is today. But what we can start with is, okay, what does it cost today? If you were to need the care today at 92, what would it cost? And then we can, using an inflation assumption, we can kind of estimate what it might cost 30 years from now. Now, we don't know exactly when we'll need the care. I just used 92 as a round number. You might need care at 95 or 100 or 85. That's what we don't know. If we'll need the care, how much it will cost, and when we will need the care, or even how long we'll need the care. These are all questions that we've got to make, reasonable assumptions of, okay, if we did need the care, how are we going to address those costs? So that's one of the core beliefs that we have at Retire Strong is long-term care is a risk to anybody's retirement plan. Now, the strategy, the exact strategy or specific strategy that we deploy to address that risk it can be different person to person. There's a lot of people that are uninsurable, so long-term care insurance is not even on the table for them. But it all starts with your core beliefs, that you have. And one of ours at Retire Strong is long-term care insurance. It can play a big, big factor in your retirement plan. It's a risk. We need to address it. We need to talk about how we are going to plan for it. At Retire Strong, we also believe that inflation is one of the biggest risks that people have to their retirement plan. Now, as an elementary example of this, we can just look at a U.S. postage stamp. And on July 12th of this year, the price of a postage stamp is going up to 82 cents for a first class forever postage stamp. You look 30 years ago, the price of that same postage stamp was 2 cents. You look at Medicare premium costs the last 20 years and how much they have risen, it's around 5% per year. So another one of our core beliefs at Retire Strong is that inflation is here to stay. It's one of our biggest risks that we need to address, we need to account for when it comes to our retirement planning, and especially healthcare costs. My goodness, healthcare costs seem to go up more historically than average inflation. And we also believe that fixing your income going into 30 years of rising living costs is financial suicide. And that's what some people do when they enter retirement. They want to fix their income for maybe a guaranteed income source. We won't get into it, but just imagine, let me give you another example. Let's look at what you earned 30 years ago in 1996. And imagine saying to your boss, I don't need a raise for the next 30 years. You pay me what you're paying me now, in current day was 1996, and you never have to give me another raise again for the next 30 years. You would never sign up for that. Because what happened all around you is the price of a postage stamp went up, the price of gas went up, the price of health insurance and auto insurance, and everything you can think of. Your grocery bill. Think of what your grocery bill was 30 years ago. You could fill a shopping cart for $50. I don't think you could fill a handbasket for $50 with what things cost now in grocery stores. It's incredible. So getting back to the core beliefs, that's another one. Inflation at Retire Strong. We believe inflation is here to stay. It's a huge risk. We've got a plan for it. And things every year, everything you buy will cost more. And how do we make sure we can still pay for things 30 years from now? That's, again, one of our core beliefs, which in turn dictate our strategy and what we're trying to plan exactly for. Because again, based on those core beliefs that we have, okay, of what the future will hold, how do we come up with a strategy that gives us the highest probability of putting us in the best place possible during and throughout retirement with those beliefs in mind? Another one that we have is that, hey, we're 40 trillion debt. We're about 40 trillion in debt as a country right now. And that number keeps growing and growing. And just the interest on that debt is a huge, huge number. It's more than the annual defense spending in the US. So we realize, okay, that is a threat. Being 40 trillion in debt as a country is a threat, and things are probably going to change in the future to account for that. You just can't keep going more and more in debt. Before long, you'll be 100 trillion in debt with no end in sight. So it's our belief, one of our core beliefs is that this is a risk. And because as a country, we're so far in debt, we believe there's a high likelihood, approaching certainty, that taxes in the future over the next 30 years, which are, for most listeners of this podcast, are going to be the bulk of your retirement days, that your tax strategy needs to be dialed in to account for this. Because taxes cannot stay the same the way they are right now, given the fact that we're 40 trillion as a country in the hole. So we need to plan and account for that. And that's going to drive the decision-making that we have and the strategy when it comes to your, not only maybe your withdrawal strategy in retirement, but other factors as well, like Roth conversions and things like that. Now, we also need to take into account or consider, what if we're wrong? What if taxes stay exactly the same the next 30 years? I think most of us would agree that that's highly unlikely, but it's something to consider. So think about your core beliefs. What do you believe in? I just gave you a couple of ours that we have at Retire Strong that really, really stick out to us, and they drive the strategy of our retirement planning. Again, your personal goals, your retirement vision, that drives all the planning. And in the first segment of today's episode, we talked about where the planning was lacking. Not much thought had really gone into developing a comprehensive retirement plan based on somebody's individual goals that they have. Because I don't know about you, but I look at retirement like, hey, those are the best years ahead of me. Every day's a Saturday. I want to do some things. I want to write those last 3 to 4 chapters of my life. I want them to be interesting and fun to read. And I want them to put a smile on my face. Now, the beautiful thing is you get to write your chapters. What does that retirement vision look like to you? What will make you happy? It might be starting a small business in retirement. It might be working part-time. It might be volunteering. It might be traveling. It might be buying a condo in Florida. It might be relocating to Florida. It might involve a membership at a country club where you can golf or play tennis 3-4 days a week if you wanted to. It might be special time and vacations with the grandkids. It might be helping fund college education and other pursuits that maybe those grandkids have. You get to write the chapters, but those goals, they all drive the planning. I can't tell you what those goals are. You have to come up with them on your own. And those were the missing pieces. When we go back to the first segment of today's episode, those were the pieces that were missing. Instead of saying, okay, you've got X amount of dollars in your 401k, you're cool, you're good. I think that's taking the lazy approach instead of saying, okay, let's dive deeper and say, hey, how are we going to spend this money throughout retirement? What's our retirement vision? What are the goals that we have? What's going to make us happy in retirement? And until you answer all that, until you put the pieces of the retirement puzzle together and develop a plan that takes all of that into account, that may sound like a terrible retirement vision to somebody else, but who cares? It's your retirement. It's not theirs. And that's what we're planning for. As an example, just as I was talking about those different goals that people have, like retiring to Florida, you might immediately say, well, I don't want to retire to Florida. Good, that's okay. That's somebody else's plan. That's not yours. You have to come up with your own. So I hope this episode of the Retirement Made Easy podcast has been helpful, maybe even thought-provoking. Please submit your questions through our website, retirestrongfa.com. There's a link in the show notes. I'll see you next time, and remember, always dream big.
Content in this material is for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. The content in this material does not necessarily reflect the views of LPL Financial. This is a hypothetical example and is not representative of any specific situation. Your results will vary. The hypothetical rates of return used do not reflect the deduction of fees and charges inherent to investing. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments might be appropriate for you, please consult your attorney, tax advisor, or financial planner prior to investing. This is a hypothetical example and is not representative of any specific investment. Your results may vary. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices mentioned are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. There is no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance your overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect completely against market risk. All investing involves risk, including loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to take a required minimum distribution, RMD, in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized tax advice. We suggest that you discuss your specific tax issues with a qualified tax advisor. Fixed and variable annuities are suitable for long-term investing, such as retirement investing. Gains from tax-deferred investments are taxed as ordinary income upon withdrawal. Guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing company. Withdrawals made prior to age 59 and a half are subject to a 10% IRS penalty tax, and surrender charges may apply. Variable annuities are subject to market risk and may lose value. Riders are additional guarantee options that are available to an annuity or life insurance contract holder. While some riders are part of an existing contract, many others may carry additional fees, charges, and restrictions, and the policyholder should review their contract before purchasing. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to take a required minimum distribution, RMD, in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized tax advice. We suggest that you discuss your specific tax issues with a qualified tax advisor. Retire Strong Financial Advisors and LPL Financial are not endorsed by or affiliated with the United States Social Security Administration or any government agency. Retire Strong Financial Advisors and LPL Financial are not endorsed by or affiliated with the U.S. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services or any government agency.
Thank you for listening to the show today. Check us out at our website, retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. And if you want some help from Greg, submit your questions at the bottom of the page or sign up for a 30-minute retirement coaching session with Greg. We'll see you next week.